Greg Olsen, he's a Fox analyst, three-time Pro Bowler, joining us on the program. What was your best salary in the NFL?
I want to say towards the end of my career, I probably was making 7 million, and now the best tight ends in the league are making 16.
Did you ever participate in negotiations? Be in the room when they're
No,
discussing your contract? No?
no. My agent Drew Rosenhaus, I had him since I came out of Miami. He handled all negotiations. I mean, I was up to speed. He would call me and debrief me in pretty good detail along what was said and what the conversations and the back and forth. But no, I never participated directly. I tried to stay out of that and just let him handle kind of being the go-between between myself and the organization.
Why is Jerry Jones allowed to negotiate with Micah Parsons individually when I think the CBA says your agent has to be in there to, negotiate?
That's a great question. And I thought all along that was a very interesting part of the conversation. I know you guys now are bringing it up and discussing it. I don't know the exact reasons. I don't know the exact legalities of what's in the CBA by writing, but my understanding was always players can represent themselves. There's multiple players throughout the league for a long time that have negotiated their own contracts because they don't have a registered contract agent on file with the NFLPA or, all of that. So in that regard, you would work directly with the general manager or the front office to negotiate on your own behalf. But my understanding was if you had representation and that was filed with the PA and all of that, that they should be the go-between. So I'm not sure the exact specifics, but I think it's a great question. I just think it adds to what we're seeing now. It leads to this. This is why players have agents. And I know 3% is kicked around and that's being now negotiated to a lower number for a lot of young players. And I get it. But this is why you pay the money, to keep the personal animosity out of the way between you. These contracts get tough, whether you're Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Micah Parsons or a guy further down the roster. The team is going to use every bit of leverage they have. They're going to tell your agent, or in this case yourself, reasons why you shouldn't make what you want. And then you're going to try to counter that. And it's going to get testy. It's inevitable nature of negotiations. And that's why having that buffer in between keeps things from getting personal like we're seeing here in Dallas.
More concerning, let's take Micah Parsons out of the equation because I do think that deal will get done. The Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals or Terry McLaurin, which one is more damaging to that team's potential success this season?
Man, that's a great question. I would say Hendrickson up in Cincinnati just because we know how much conversation has surrounded the Bengals defense. They fire the DC, they hire Al Golden. The longtime college DC from Penn State, who was most recently at at Notre Dame. I guess my question is, can that defense they weren't very good to begin with last year, and Joe Burrow had an unbelievable season, and they still fell short of expectations. With the whole emphasis in the offseason for them getting back into the likes of the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs to get themselves back in the AFC to that echelon with Joe Burrow, they can't do it without the defense getting better. And now you take away the sack leader, you take away your best defensive player. Can you assume that you're going to be back in Super Bowl contention to complement one of the best offenses in football? So I would say for them, this is a significant storyline. And if they can't figure it out, what was already a weakness, now you take away your best player, you have to assume it's even worse.
Help me understand why Anthony Richardson would be the bust and not the Colts general manager, Chris Ballard. Because Anthony Richardson didn't take himself at 4 overall. The Colts did. They took a project that high he had glimpses in college, but you start him week 1. Like I'm just trying to and the kid is 23 years of age, and it feels like the NFL will move on from him.
Yeah, and again, this is not an indictment of Anthony Richardson. I don't know the kid that well. I don't know the ins and outs behind the scenes there, but I will say this in credit to Chris Ballard. I think the best guys in the NFL, whether it's coaches, front office personnel, general managers, when you know you've made a mistake, I think the teams that continue to double down and prolong this experiment end up finding themselves out of work. I think the best organizations understand, you know what? This was a miss. And now this is a big one, right? You take a top 5 quarterback, it sets your franchise back multiple years. But if you continue to push it down the road and said, it's going to change, and I can't admit failure, I can't admit that I was wrong, typically that blows up the entire organization, and there's another general manager there. So I do give him a little bit credit. If behind the scenes, him and Shane Steichen are saying, you know what, we missed, he's not the guy, Daniel Jones gives us a better chance to win, I almost think that's the more difficult decision, and one that if it was even close, Anthony Richardson, just because of his draft pedigree, would be the week 1 starter. So I think we see this all the time in free agency. The Eagles just won the Super Bowl and huffed their big free agent signing from the Jets. They paid $1 bazillion. He didn't play down the stretch. And guess what? This year, they shipped him off for pennies on the dollar to another organization. And Howie Roseman said, you know what? I missed on that one, but we're going to move on. So it's different when it's the quarterback, but the good organizations admit defeat. They admit when they were wrong, and you got to move on.
I think that's really a great point. And I had not thought of that. And maybe that's what the Colts are doing, that, yes, we saw 2 years and he's not our guy. Now maybe you can trade him to somebody, and maybe he could. We're seeing this cycle now far more than we used to. 2 years, maybe 3 years, didn't work out. Now you go, you're going to be a backup. And it's like almost the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. Yeah. We'll bring you back around. Maybe it's a better coaching staff. Maybe it's a better team. And maybe Anthony Richardson still has a future. We're talking to Greg Olsen, Fox NFL analyst, and you can tune in to Youth Inc. And Greg has a weekly podcast. He had Tom Brady on, Malcolm Gladwell on, and you're talking about sports and parenting and the next generation of athletes. How'd you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so it's actually been a really fun project for us. I'm a dad of 3. I'm the son of a high school football coach from New Jersey, legendary coach out of the Northeast, coached over 40 years, coached me and my brother. So I grew up in this world. Like when I was a young kid, the highlight of our life was playing varsity football one day for my dad. Fortunately, I was able to go on and make a career out of it. But now as a father, raising 3 young kids in a very different youth sports culture than any of us remember and any of us really grew up in. And there was a lot of things that we were doing wrong, a lot of things that I didn't have a great idea of what the right path forward was for my sons and my daughter. And we said, you know what, there's a lot of really interesting people out there that have great perspectives and great lessons to be shared. And let's go find those people. So we've had a lot of really cool conversations. Our latest season that we just dropped, you mentioned Tom Brady. We had Malcolm Gladwell this week. And next week we'll have Ryan Day coming off the national championship, getting ready for that big Texas game, and CJ Stroud, and just some really fun and really insightful people that have really good experiences that can be great for parents, coaches, young athletes, people dealing with different adversities. We think it can really help a lot of people. And along the way, as the host, quote unquote, I'm learning more than anyone and trying to implement a lot of these values and lessons into my own youth coaching and also into just my parenting.
It's Youth Inc., INC, and it's a weekly podcast. I was curious about this when we were going to have you on, of how much of your job now as a broadcaster for Fox is your football knowledge, and how much of it is the ability to understand TV.
Well, I think it's a great question, because I joke with my producer and director all the time. Like, the football part, I always felt pretty good about. The football part, I felt like I always understood and I saw, and I really enjoy talking the game and formulating different storylines to present to the viewer and letting them kind of unravel in real time during the broadcast. The TV part is the part I think all of us have to learn, right? You have to learn how to go in and out of commercial breaks. You have to learn how to talk to the truck. I always joke, like, still to this point today, when I want it behind the defense, the fancy TV people call it, I want the pit, I want pit framing. I'm like, I just want behind the defense, whatever that is called, give me that. So I'm still learning some of the nuance, the terminology, where all the cameras are. And I've gotten a lot better now going into my 5th year, but it's very interesting. The football part, I feel like that's the easy part. Making that fit into a 3-hour live broadcast, talk in segments, talk in sound bites, not talking over your play-by-play, commercial breaks, ad reads. Fortunately, I've had great partners. I got Joe Davis now, who's incredible. Kevin Burkhardt before that. They handle all the TV, and I tell them I'll just do the football part. So I've been lucky in that regard.
Well, you're on a play clock too, though, when you think about it,
Yeah.
that you might have 12 seconds to describe something, and then you got to turn it over to your play-by-play guy so he can do his job. And this is where Jim Nantz is unbelievable, because Tony will kind of color outside the line sometime, and all of a sudden, Jim's got to grab it at the last second and, go 3rd and 8, So I understand the timing part of it, but so many guys that came through ESPN, these are legendary coaches and players, and I said, you got to understand TV. And even Rodney Harrison and Tony Dungy on Football Night in America, I said, you guys are rookies. You know nothing about TV. Listen to me, and you'll do fine. You know football, but that's only part of the equation. They'd look at you, go, you just talk. I go, no. If somebody in your ear goes, hey, you got 20 seconds. Well, you don't know what 20 seconds is.
Yep.
In real time playing a game, you do. 20 seconds in TV, you're like, I don't know. How long am I going? You went 42 seconds. You're like, I did?
No, and you're spot on. And the voice in your ear is an adjustment. Early on in my career, the natural instinct of anybody is when someone says something to you while you're talking, you stop and you want to listen. Well, obviously you sound silly on live television if you do that. To your point about play-by-play guys, there's no such thing as a good color analyst without a good play-by-play guy. They are the heroes of all of this. They are the professionals, quote unquote. Like, they keep this train on the tracks running and give you the space and the breath and the leads to then talk about the things that they really know you're interested in or you feel good about and you want to take the broadcast. So it is more of a dance. It is a rhythm. It's ever changing. Every game has a different cadence. There's games that have 1 million penalties and 1 million commercial breaks and 1 million injuries. Those get super choppy. And then there's the dream games, which every play is a long, fluid drive. There's multiple first downs in every possession. You can really let some of these storylines unravel. You don't feel like you have to force it in because it's a 3-and-out punt commercial. So again, the part of the experience that I've enjoyed the most is the unpredictability of it, where you have a basic idea of the matchup, you have a basic idea of the flow of the game, but then once it's kicked off, no different than a player, nobody can sit there and say, I know exactly how this game's going to go, and I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z in that order. Chances are that's going to be thrown upside down, and then you have to adjust on the fly and make it sound fun and interesting.
All right, a couple of rapid-fire questions before we let you go. Who feels more Hall of Fame? Who feels more Hall of Fame? Matthew Stafford or Russell Wilson?
Wow, that's a great question. Kind of interesting career arcs, right? Like, Russell started out so hot and now down the stretch trying to find his way. Stafford obviously started in a perennially terrible team, got them a little bit better, and then has had his success later. Oh man, I think creatures of the moment, Stafford. It feels like because the last memories we have of his teams have been more relevant as of recent. Russ, for as amazing as Russ has been, a lot of his success can't. That's a really good question, but I think if you put a gun to my head, just recency bias would be Stafford. But I would probably make the argument that they both are deserving.
If I take the names off the resumes, it's a no-brainer. It's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's my point. Like, the Pro Bowls, I think it's recency bias, which was kind of my initial instinct with Stafford. In my mind, there's no question that Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer. I think everyone's going to try to use the last couple of years of kind of bouncing, finding a home. But they forget just how dominant he was. I know Seattle was incredible. I know the defense, but that shouldn't be taken away. In my mind, Russell's a Hall of Famer. The way you posed the question you posed was such a good one. I think the recency success of the Rams, the Super Bowl, and Stafford post Detroit, I could see that being the argument.
Is Cam Newton a Hall of Famer?
Yeah. In my mind, he is. And I think you have to look past, I have no idea where he stands in total yards passing and total touchdowns. I don't know statistically, which I know is a big part of that process. When you talk about changing the way the game is played, quarterbacks running the ball on short yardage, quarterbacks playing, down near the goal line, the ability to still be a 4,000-yard passer from the pocket. When he came into the league, there was very few, if any, guys playing the quarterback position the way he played it. And now there's almost no pocket passers left. Or there's, Burrow, there's a couple, but the game is played on the move. The game is played athletically, both in and out of the pocket. And Cam was at the front end of a lot of that.
Great stuff. Great to talk to you. Hope you have a great season coming up. We'll check in with you. And the podcast, it's a weekly podcast. It's entitled Youth Inc. with Greg Olsen. Next guest will be Ryan Day. C.J. Stroud is also on the guest list, and he's already had a podcast tape with Tom Brady and the author Malcolm Gladwell. Thanks again, Greg. Great spending time.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.